I know I've said repeatedly that I'm going to try to curb my eBay addiction, but a few weeks ago...
Tell me what you've been doing. Busy little bee.
A while ago, I was browsing eBay for old computers with about 50 tabs open, because I find it's best just to give in to your addictions. That's a joke, by the way, don't do that. And I found what looks like a pretty good deal on an older used PC, and even though it is several years old, I think the release date for this model was actually around 2014, 2015, it's probably going to be my primary computer, which might not be a surprise to you if you've been watching this channel because everything I own is pretty old. But this computer altogether was $165 on eBay. It's an older office PC, but it has been updated, it has been modified, and if everything came as described, I think it's going to be really solid. It has the i7 6700 processor, which again is older, but it's pretty decent, especially for the price. So we'll go over the specs, go over what made it a good deal, and then we'll do some testing later on in the video and see how everything pans out. So let's take a look at this system, break it down, get into the components, and do all that sort of fun stuff. And those of you who are in the know if you watch this channel that it's all about the mighty chair desk. Now here we have the monster itself, the HP Z240 Micro Tower. On the front we have two USB 2.0, two USB 3.0, and an SD card reader, which is pretty cool because a lot of these older model computers don't have that. Now the integrated onboard ports, we have DVI and two DisplayPort, but this actually came with a graphics card and a pretty decent one, which we'll get into that when we crack open the case, but that's DVI, two DisplayPorts. We have four USB 3.0, two more USB 2.0, then our Ethernet and all that kind of fun stuff. Now the downside of these Micro Tower models is that obviously they take up more space, but they also have a more powerful PSU, more connectors for hard drives, as well as more spaces for additional hard drives. I just like the looks of these. I like the design, I like the appearance. And if you crack it open and look at it. Look at it! Look how it's nice and clean and orderly on the inside. That's what I really like about these Micro Tower models, is everything, there's plenty of space in here to work. Everything is open, easily accessible. All your parts are just right there, ready to go. But let's get into the individual components and we'll take a look at what we have. And we'll take a closer look, but first, the easy things to point out. We have our PSU, our hard drives, and this did come with a special little treat in regards to hard drives, which we'll get into when we take a closer look. But also here's our CPU fan and CPU. This came with the i7 6700, which is 4 cores, 8 threads, 3.4 gigahertz base clock rate, and I believe 4.0 turbo boost. Also, just a note of caution for these Micro Tower models. You do have to be careful just because of the sheer size of them. I once spent 10 hours trapped under one of these monsters. It was haunting and yet extremely profound as well. So for a more detailed view of the components, first of all, like I said, we have the i7 6700 processor, which generally speaking, you find that for around $70 to $80 used on eBay. So there's pretty good value just in the processor alone. Obviously, we have our dedicated CPU fan, which I like that. I prefer to see that over, sometimes you'll see these models, they just have they have a heat sink over the CPU and then a standard case fan kind of blowing air over it or pulling air over it. I prefer it when it actually has its own dedicated CPU fan, but enough about the fan. Came with 32 gigabytes of RAM, which also pretty sweet. Those are 4 8 gigabyte sticks, DDR4 RAM. So there's value just in that right there, just in the RAM. Let me flip this over. This came with the NVIDIA Quadro K2200. Too high end of a GPU would just bottleneck out on this system. That's actually probably right where we'd want it to be, right on the high end for a computer that's an older model like this. That's 4 gigabytes of GDDR5 RAM, but the Quadro K2200, generally speaking, that's around $50 used on eBay as well. So again, there's solid value just in that. So this came with 2 hard drives actually. It has our 1 terabyte HDD, which nothing impressive. That is a fair amount of storage, but I do want to run off an SSD, which takes us to the final component I want to cover here. When I first took the computer out of the box it shipped in, I heard something rattling around in there, and I thought, great, used old PC, something's just broken, it's just rolling around. And what I discovered was this. And at first, I had no idea what this was. I was looking at it like, what did a part of the GPU break off or something? Like, what is that? Turns out this is an NVMe SSD hard drive, which I didn't recognize at first because I've never seen an SSD with its own dedicated heatsink. I didn't even know that was a thing. Please don't make fun of me in the comments.
No! Yes!
So once again, there's value just in this. 256 gigabytes NVMe SSD. Generally, you'll find these used on eBay for around $30. If you're vigilant, you can find it, $20 on the lower end. When you put all of these things together, this is actually a pretty solid machine. I've read that some of these older models of PC won't boot from an NVMe hard drive, so it's possible this is just in there for additional faster storage. I'm hoping that's not the case with this Z240. I'm hoping we can boot from the NVMe. If not, I'm going to have to install a 2.5-inch SSD, which is not a big deal, but it will be disappointing. So I updated the BIOS, I played around in the BIOS settings, and it doesn't seem like you're able to install the operating system directly onto an M2 drive on this computer. I did a little research, and it seems like other people using this model had the same problem. From what I've read, it doesn't seem like it's possible.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams!
As it stands now, I've got Windows installed, I installed the drivers for the NVIDIA graphics card, and now we can get into some testing and such. So really quickly, we'll go over our specs here. We have the i7 6700, as mentioned before, 32 gigabytes of RAM, NVIDIA Quadro K2200 GPU. Alright, so to test out the machine, we're going to run some games because, well, for a couple of reasons. One is gaming is the thing that people always want to know about, and two, gaming is also pretty demanding on the hardware, so it's a good benchmark or a good test to see generally where your level of performance is at. And thanks to the Steam summer sale, I have a couple of new suspects to add to the lineup, so I do have some newer games we can use for some testing. Alright, we're starting off with Fallout 4, and while this is an older game, it is highly detailed, pretty graphically impressive, has a large open world map, so it's not exactly a cakewalk for the system to run, but it's smooth so far, everything feels good, it's responsive, no serious frame rate dropping. We're running all these games at 1920 by 1080. And yeah, I don't think we're going to have any problem with this game, but again, it is older, so we'll move on to some newer ones. Alright, Devil May Cry 5. Again, we are running at the highest settings, and the frame rate seems to be pretty consistent between 50 and 60. It's running nicely, I'm not having any major stutters or any problems. It feels smooth, the action feels completely fine. Yeah, it's not bad at all so far. Oh, and this game is from 2019, by the way. Alright, the last one we're going to try here is Mass Exodus. This is also a 2019 game. This one has higher recommended settings than Devil May Cry did, and it did auto-detect the highest graphical settings, which is Ultimate. And again, the frame rate is good, it feels good, it's smooth, it's no drops or dips in performance or anything. It's not much action in terms of the scenes to add here, but that's more to do with me just starting this game, and you only start off with like 2 bullets. Aside from that, yeah, it's running perfectly fine. It's not a problem. So yeah, not a bad mid-level gaming PC, or at least it seems like that's going to be the case. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this computer. I'm pretty sure it's going to do just about anything I need it to. And it seems like the i7 6700 is a good processor to look out for right now in regards to price to performance. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate everyone who's been tuning in. And that is all. Catch you later.